Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Applying Financial Education to your EMS agency. To kind of phrase on combat your comment from me. Um, there is one disclosure I do want to put out there real quick. Is that this is EMS funding and finance according to Tim. It is not necessarily valid or reliable. So I think that you should consult your accountant before applying any particular portions of what I'm about to present to you today. However, what I will say though, is this is a system that my office manager and I developed about 25 years ago. We have been consistent with it throughout the 25 years. It has never failed us. We have gotten close sometimes, like not running out of money, but running low on it. But we've always been able to tell our story. And even when I think of applying financial education, what is the story you're trying to tell and who are you trying to tell it to? So having to understand that, and even when I think about the presentation itself, it's kind of unorthodox and you're kind of see why it's not a PowerPoint, it's a PDF that I'm carrying. You will see why in a few minutes because I've got some large spreadsheets with little tiny numbers on it, and the whole thing with the PDF is I can zoom in on them so everybody from the front of the room to the back of the room will be able to see it, and even those online. So why does education matter? Well, do we have to tell you? And even from some of the stuff you've heard in the last couple of days, our costs are rising, and especially if you are a patient billing only service, you probably aren't seeing any significant increases in your patient revenue. You're probably actually seeing some reductions in your patient revenue. And that could be from any number of cases, like if your billing company's not doing their job, or more significantly, your family still revenue faster than what you're thinking is. Do you know how your payer mix is shifting? You have to understand financial principles to sustain your operations. Obviously, we have things we have to buy, and you have to have the means to purchase it from. And it connects, and it's funny because some of this I'll just kind of go through quick because it's I know I'm the one standing between you and the door, and I think some of this is repetitive from what you've heard over the past few days. But the interesting thing is when you think of your financial statements and 90%, it does build transparency, especially between your board, your taxpayers, and your staff. What's interesting, even with my board, I had at least one person now, I believe, on my board that's probably a financial person who really understands accrued accounting. She can really connect the balance sheet to the statement of cash flows, to the income statement. She understands all that. To this day, I still have a hard time with that. I still have a hard time struggling with that. So I have to kind of keep it simple, stupid, because that's me. And that's kind of why I follow on this topic. The key financial tool, just for the purpose of this presentation today, is I'm going to be showing you a little bit about our actual versus budget and year-end projections. We're going to talk a little bit about the UHU. You know, for years, I fought the UHU. I didn't get it. I didn't want to get it. I didn't see the value of it. And oh, by the way, nobody pays me on UHU. They pay me for transport, right? So why do I need to understand that whole concept of the unit hour utilization and what it means to me? But really, it is a performance metric. How well you're doing. It's one of the things that when you think what is probably the biggest cost, we don't talk about it very often, unless we're making it an advocacy setting. But what is the biggest cost in our industry today? What do you think that is? I think the NRCL is lentils, the locals, preparedness for trauma, the launch. Readiness. We often talk about readiness costs. And we say, well, what is readiness cost? Costs are all the costs associated with equipping, staffing, putting ambulances in service on the streets. Right? the other cost is just the direct cost, transport cost, right? Have you ever had anybody ask you the question, what does that mean? What do you mean when you say readiness cost? And that's the biggest cost. What does it mean? How much money are you talking about? Do you know that you can figure out your readiness cost for your agency based on your UHU? And I'll show you how to do that. So why should you monitor your UHU? Well, does talk about your efficiency. And it informs you about overutilization and or underutilization. Based on the UHU, the closer to 1 you get, and if you're 1, you're really efficient. I mean, you're really maximizing the utility. Sorry about blue. You're really maximizing your utility, but you're wearing your crews out. You're burning them out. And I think this is Donna referred to as a good UHU is what, about 0.3 something, 0.4 something. Is probably a good workable UHU.
Depends on where you're located. Depends on size of the district.
It does. So it does help protect your workforce, especially in managing fatigue and safety risks. And it helps advocacy efforts to help you tell a story. And so what I want to be able to do next is, and this is where the PowerPoint presentation or the PDF is going to be really helpful for me. So governments generally break their major areas up into funds, right? How many of you use QuickBooks? You can do fund accounting by using classes. And so we have the three major classes, EMS, that's the 911 side, the TAC, that's our MNE side. Then we do have a training and education, and we kind of set that up to monitor our outside training and education. And we also use it to kind of track our SAMHSA grants. The siren grants, we were the recipient of 2 of the siren grants. And this is actually a great way of helping you to track your grant through this well. So as you can see, even within this income statement, profit and loss, we do break it down by our primary revenue sources, property sales, operating interest fees, and other revenue. Other revenue is our contract revenue, our grant revenue, all that. But we were lucky in 2018, we did pass a 0.5% sales tax for our district. And last year, 2024, yep, we passed an additional 1 cent sales tax to help support our district. So you can see how the revenues break down. Our administrative division, we can really think about it. There could be some operational expenses included in this category, but a lot of them are the fixed expenses. Those expenses you have to pay, run maintenance, legal fees, the reporting software, those types of things that are pretty much fixed as paid every year. And you break that down to totals. Then you have your EMS operations. Next. And there's a whole bunch of subcategories below it. But you can see how those numbers break down. And then obviously our other areas such as capital expenses, debt service, grant expenditures, and so on. So you can get down to the bottom line, even what our current status is as of September 22nd. So I can run that up to this amount of time. Well, the other thing is even when you heard from other folks, sometimes there are things come up that you didn't plan, and all of a sudden some of your old life activities that are sometimes old, various components of them are starting to break, and you can't get service contracts on any of them anymore at $2,000 a year to replace that pulse oximetry part in it. You can find out that part alone is $7,000. And one of the worst things you want to have happen is to have your monitor at a critical moment or your dog escaped out of the room and you're not paying attention. So one of the things that I like about this version of the income statement, putting it up next to the budget as well, is it does give me a snapshot in time, especially as far as what we're currently spending our money on, how much money we got in, how much more do we project to get in, and it kind of shows me liquidity at a fast, friendly period of time. So you can see even from property sales and our primary revenue sources, what we believe we're going to generate this year, same thing throughout the administrative division. Where we are, what was budgeted, what percentage of the budget we're at right now, and what we're projecting for year end. EMS operations division, same thing, showing all that information. And then I also ended with potential ending fund balances as well. So I know where I am, what I plan, and where I could be by the end of the year. Does that all make sense? So a lot of the next few slides is going to be based in a, oh, there's the dog. Sorry. Blue sit. Yeah, good boy. Are based and come from these sources. And this is where I really like my system matrix, because this is where I can start telling stories. This is where, even when I'm in my advocacy efforts, or I'm with taxpayers, or I'm whatever, whoever I'm talking to, the first thing I do is I track my trends. And obviously there's a lot of numbers at the top, but if you really want to see the trends, especially in calls and transports, the seasons 20 and 15 have had some relatively steady increases in calls, number of calls we're responding to. My transports, however, have been remaining relatively flat. Gotta be concerning because the top, the blue bar, is not billable, at least not yet. The bottom line is the billable line, correct? We also have an MIH program. So the emphasis is on transporting only those patients that need to be transported and not transporting the ones that don't need to be transported to the hospital. Another reason why that's important is I have 3 ambulances on duty 24/7, 365. I have to try, and my hospitals, generally speaking, I've got one local critical access in the Woodland Park, but we often end up taking a lot of them downtown, and a lot of our ambulance patients go downtown. Because I have a high concurrent call percentage, and you'll see some of that in just a minute, I have to try to keep my ambulances in town as much as possible. So if I can utilize my community paramedic to go in, and even if it's a mental health, or it's a substance abuse, or it's a home call, or it could be a treatment in place, so I free up the ambulance to utilize my community paramedic to do that, I have surplus capacity. The other value of having that surplus capacity of a community paramedic or an ambulance is they're paramedics first before their community paramedic. They can actually jump on the ambulance with another paramedic if you have a critical patient aboard to assist them. They can also jump on ambulances with people like me, because one of the things that I did not include in my introduction is, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tim Dietz, ENTP, DSIDP, SF. I'm a driver, sure cut, IV pole, second pole and IV, and I'm a stretcher specialist. But I can still be great help to those crews on those ambulances. Then I start getting into some of my little more statistics. On average, my crews are running about 13 calls a day. We're transporting 5 patients a day. And so we're running about 4 responses per unit per day and 2 transports per day. I break that down by EMS. You can see that specifically for ambulances. You can see that I have 44% concurrent call rate. 44% of the time I have one ambulance on a call, I got another on call. You'll be amazing how many times it's actually 3. And we get down to level 0, or with my community paramedics and administrative staff, the driver Sherpa IV pole, we can go out and stack with 4 cars. And these are my community paramedic staff, so running about 4 calls a day. Yeah. There's a few transports, but not enough throughout the year to really show on the chart, so we're running about 2 calls a day. Then I start looking at my UHUs. The first thing I have to do is I have to calculate my unit hours. That literally starts off with, you have to have a start date, you have to have an end date. The period that is, that covers those period of days. So I can determine how many days are in that period. I have 3 ambulances on duty. Each one is on duty for 24 hours. So you multiply the 24 times 3, you have 72 hours worth of ambulance coverage a day. That gives me 19,080 hours of ambulance hours and 12,720 hours of action coverage. So before you can go into the UHUs, you need to know that. So then we start talking about the UHU, and that the specifics of how you calculate it are right below that. But working through the math, my response UHU, the reason why I have to do the response UHU and then even a transport UHU is the basic unit hour utilization is based on 1 hour. How many of you in this room's call lasts only 1 hour? Only 1 hour. A lot of times it's an hour and a half, it could be 2 hours, it could be 3 hours, it could be 4 hours, depending on how much coverage area you have to do.
And are you including getting back and finishing documentation and restocking the rigs?
Yes. Even though they're still in service a lot of that time, even if they're on their way up from Colorado Springs back to Little Park and they're on the west side, they're at Memorial Hospital, they're still available to run back up the hill to answer.
So you also add charting into your UHU? You
I
add
do.
charting?
I do.
Yeah.
Because once again, when I'm trying to figure out how many hours a day they're doing things for me,
Yeah.
or for the district and running calls, I can get to that number. Then I also have to figure out, well, gee, they come in, they have to check the car, they have daily station duty, shower, chores. They have to clean the kitchen, sweep the floor, clean the bathrooms, make sure their bedrooms are clean, make sure the ambulance is clean. But then a lot of them have special duties. Some of them do supplies, some of them do vehicle maintenance, some of them do facility maintenance. Through all of that, if I can even try to figure out how many hours in a day they're doing work directly related to what it is they were hired to do, and that is to run ambulance calls, then that helps me get a better impression. So the response UHU is how many ambulance calls did we go to that didn't involve a transport. So that's 244 responses, so that gives me a base UHU of 0.12. Then when I factor in the average call for me, it's like an hour and a half, that gives me a UHU of 0.19. Huh? See how you are.
And how did you come up with the 1.5 for the 10 months asked?
I look at my calls, ESO, from time the call starts to the time the call is closed.
Okay.
That helps me get that number. Sometimes I have to, and some of it involves estimates, right? Because they'll get called. They'll be back at the Woodland Park, they'll get back to the station, boom, they're on another call, so they're still not running the report. So some of it is guesswork. I wish I could get it more accurate.
Yeah.
But I can't. Long story short, about 4.5 hours, 4 hours, 4.5 hours. Then I look at my transport UHU. Same thing, time on task about 3 hours. Come up with almost 5 hours, and then I do a blended. I want the average overall. And they seem like they pretty much flow across as you're going from your response, your transport, your blended UHU. They're all about the same, about 5 hours altogether. Now, this one, the 20% is going to become important here in just a few minutes, and I'll show you what that 20% is. And that does go back up to your transport UHU of 0.0 205. You could say it's 21, Excel, didn't round it up. To 21, it left it at 20. My pack UHU, you can see is 0.19. This is going to become important because you want to apply the correct measure to the thing you're trying to measure, right? And I'll show you what that is here.
Your PACT is your MIH program?
That PACT is the MIH program. We call it the Paramedic Advanced Care Team. They do our behavioral health response, mobile crisis response, substance abuse, support home calls, support the 911 crews on calls. So
I'm curious why for your combined you divided by 2. What do you have is transports exactly half of your call volume?
pardon?
I'm curious why for the combined, when you added response and transport and then divided by 2, is transports exactly half of your call volume?
Yeah, I just averaged those out, the two, so
Okay.
to get to the blended. If I'm correct, so if you look at the how you figure the blended, you take the response UH plus the transport UHU, so you get a combined one, right? You don't really see it on the spreadsheet. Well, you see the combined. It's 17.39. You divide that by 2, and you get your blend. You do 0.1975.
Shouldn't that be weighted based on percentage of transports of your
And calls.
and of your calls?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, weighted average.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're just doing straight average versus.
Mhm.
Okay.
Now, what's it costing us? Well, I have to start off with my, and this is for EMS and PAC. And this is based on the unit hour, 1 hour, right? So it's costing me for my ambulance service right now about $196 an hour. Run an ambulance for 1 hour, and $93 for the PAC program. You see part of the advantage of the PAC program? At the moment, I'm generating $278, PAC all revenue combined, and 154 for my PAC program. Very little of that PAC program revenues comes from patient bill, most is coming from contracts and agreements that we have. Now I have to convert that UHU and go back to, because my calls are not an hour. They're more than an hour. So I convert this and bring in my transport UHU and my response UHUs. And this is the metric. Once again, PAC is not focused on transport. PAC is focused on response. Ambulance is focused on transport. So it's costing me about $954 totally per transport, per unit hour, I should say, and $470 for the PAC sum. Why does this make a difference? Why do you want to make certain that you're using the right metric? So the one that we've always kind of talked about in the past was that whole cost for transport. Essentially, it's expenses divided for transports divided, expenses divided by the number of transports, right? Sorry for that little brain fart. I've only been talking about this forever. The gray area down there, right now it's costing me about $2,862 every time I transport a patient to the hospital. All revenue combined, and I can break this down further by patient revenue, but I've got a different metric to show you in that few minutes, but I'm generating $4,074, all revenue combined. So I have a return on investment, if you will, an ROI of about $1,211 per transport. This is why you don't want to use transport one for PAC. This one does not make sense at all. Again, PAC is meant to treat patients on scene, refer patients, and not take them to the hospital. So I also show district revenue by that primary source. So 65% of my revenue comes from taxes, sale of properties, civic ownership. 14% of it comes from patient revenue, and 21% of it comes from grants and contracts and other sources. Likewise, of my expenses, 96%. It shouldn't be surprising. 96% of my expenses are paid from taxes, and only 2% from patient billing, and 2% from other revenue. If I didn't have taxes coming in, we would be in trouble, big trouble. So I do a couple of other things regarding margin.
So I'm not saying trouble again, all those of those trouble. And this one, I'll show you this one first, because the next one I'm going to show you has never, ever, not ever happened to me in the past. And it is a direct result of our the sales tax that we passed last year. How many of you have a way of calculating how much your average ambulance bill should be? Do you have a formula? Or do you base it on some sort of cost for transport plus margin, whatever that margin should be that's still on?
Maybe use the old flat method.
Throw something at the dartboard and see how it fits. So according to the American Ambulance Association, and I'm going to understand why they don't talk about this more, is a formula that you can use in the back of the book. You take your total expenses, you divide that by your total number of transports, and you get your cost per transport, right? So at a minimum, if I didn't have taxes, I should be charging somewhere around $2,798 to $3,000, right? That's what I should be charging. For that, by taking the property taxes, dividing that, by the cost per transports, and I get a revised cost per transport, which is $1,458. Now, there's one number I haven't really accounted for yet, and that's the cost of uncompensated care. Now, according to the American Ambulance Association, the way you account for uncompensated care is by using your collective percentage. That's why that number is so important. So you literally take that revised cost per transport, that $458. You hit the divide button on your calculator, type in 36%. And that says that based on your expenses